Here it is. Everything you need to make a good documentary. Lights, crew, camera, a nice comfy studio. But what if you can't have all those things? What if you only have yourself, one bag, and your camera? Oh, and you're in the desert. And you only have a day or so to get the project shot. What do you do then?
Big Bend is my favorite place in the world because of a few different reasons.
It is 6:15 and we're going to try to go back into the park before the sun rises. Hopefully get some good light.
There's just this feeling in my bones that's where I'm home. It's so far and it takes so long to get there that whenever you're out there, it feels like you've earned it. I think that relates to film photography and why I like shooting film, because it's such a process and it sucks and it's hard, and a lot of the times you're frustrated while you're doing it. You don't know what you're gonna get when you take the photos. They're never what you think they're gonna be. I like the process of having to earn what you're doing. And being out in the desert, taking film photos is really hard, but it feels right. If you're gonna make the journey out here, I think it's only fitting that the next step is equally as hard. It's always hard photographing something that you love and that you hold so close to your heart, because you want the photos to reflect what you see. I know I'm gonna be coming back here many, many times, and I hope eventually to be able to make a photo book of this entire area, because I know I have a lot more to see, and I know I have a lot more photos to take.
So what that was a short example of the type of project that I'm talking about. Hey, how's it going? It's Todd with Shutterstock, and today we're talking about how to shoot a documentary style project in a remote location. So recently, me and the rest of the video team went on a really short camping trip in Big Bend National Park.
We are literally in the middle of nowhere.
And we went there primarily for Logan to take some pictures and make a video about that, which is a really cool video. If you want to check it out, click right up there. And I knew Big Bend was a very special place to Logan, so I wanted to make kind of a short sort of documentary piece around Logan and what he was doing there in the park. And the whole goal was to basically shoot an entire project using just a camera, just my bag, and really nothing else. So we only had one day in the park itself. We drove 9 hours there, 9 hours back home. So it was really short on the timeline. You're right, dude. That looks cool.
Doesn't it look cool?
That looks really cool to me. Now, I am no expert on this matter. I've never worked for National Geographic or anything like that, but this is something that I've been faced with quite a bit in my career. Basically, instances where you have no time and you have no resources, but you still have the task of telling a story. So I'm gonna walk you through some of my approach when I am faced with this type of situation. Now, I know I'm not going to blow any minds with this one, but if it makes sense, always shoot in slow motion. Hear me out. Well, specifically when you have a short amount of time to shoot, if you're shooting in 60 frames per second or 50 frames per second, somewhere around in there, every second that you're shooting, that's 2 seconds worth of time on the timeline. So if you really only have a short period of time to shoot, obviously shooting in slow motion, just on a functional level, is gonna give you more content to edit with. So when I'm in a situation like this, I'd say 90% of the time I'm shooting in slow motion. I shoot with a Blackmagic Ursa, but obviously most cameras these days have a slow motion option, whether that be 60p all the way to 240. Now it looks cool, it's more cinematic, all that kind of stuff, but to me, almost on a functional level, it makes sense. Okay, and reach up and frame up and take a photo. And this is kind of more of a personal preference, kind of the way I like to shoot, but I really love to shoot on a super wide angle lens. This is an 11-16 Tokina This is kind of a classic lens. A lot of people like this lens. I love this lens. It has a really short minimum focus distance, so you can get real close to your subject. You kind of get that Chivo look. Emmanuel Lubezki loves to shoot this way. But more than anything, on a functional level, I feel like you can get a lot more varied coverage with a lens like this. If I could bring only one lens with me on a project, it would be a lens like this. Because of the minimum focus distance, you can get really close to your subject and get these really nice close-ups where it kind of feels like you're there with the subject. And then, of course, it's a wide-angle lens, so you can pull back and get a really epic, big, wide, expansive perspective. And because it's such a wide lens, it's going to have a really deep depth of field, so you're able to move quickly and not worry quite as much about critical focus. I really love to shoot this way. To me, it feels very free-flowing. And again, we're working with limitations here. If it were up to me, I would have a 24 to 70 and a 70 to 200 in my backpack at all times, but sometimes there's just not room for all of that in your bag. Now, another thing that I definitely would never leave home without is a lot of options for filtration. For this trip, I was lucky enough to get to use one of these. This is that brand new Peter McKinnon neutral density filter. I bumped into the kind folks at Polar Pro when I was at NAB, and they gave me one of these bad boys to test out. This thing's really awesome. It comes in this really nice little case. It's got this little rubber kind of cover type deal. It's got these little stop markers on there so you can tell how much light you're actually taking out, which this is the first indie filter that I've seen that has that feature, and that's crazy to me that they should have been doing that from the beginning. So good job, Polar Pro. And if you don't know what a neutral density filter is, I'll link to a video that will explain them. But it's basically like putting sunglasses on the front of your lens. And then another filter I never leave home without is a circular polarizer. If you throw this on your lens, you're gonna get deeper blues, you're gonna get deeper colors, it's gonna cut through a lot of the haze and atmosphere, and you're just gonna get more desirable colors. So it's kind of nice to have that in your back pocket at all times. I think my biggest piece of advice is to keep the gear out of your way as much as possible. Keep it simple, find an easy method that works, and just repeat it. To me, it would be a really big shame to come to one of these beautiful places and just be stressed out the whole time. If there's a particular piece of gear that stresses you out or takes forever to set up, just consider leaving it at home. I used to bring just about any piece of gear I could think of, but eventually I learned that being stressed out and kind of overwhelmed by your gear really shows in the work. For example, for these types of shoots, I almost never use a gimbal. So I shoot with an Ursa, and obviously this is a pretty big camera, and for me to have a gimbal, I'm gonna have to use like a full-size Ronin rig, and for me, that looks like this. Now obviously I'm not gonna wanna be running around in the desert all day wearing something like that. I would probably dehydrate myself and fall over and die. It's probably a little too dramatic. That is also where the slow motion and the wide angle lens comes in. If you're shooting in slow motion and you are on a wide angle lens, you can really easily fake all the same moves that you would get with a gimbal for the most part. So I'll just, really just creep by, really creep through the scene, and sometimes I'll make sure that there's a nice little foreground element so that that motion's a little more apparent. And then when you're in post, I throw a little bit of warp stabilizer on it. Don't judge me, please. Now, I debated taking this whole portion out of this video quite a bit because, let's be honest, shooting intentionally for warp stabilizer sounds kind of ridiculous. But again, we're working with limitations, and to be honest, I'm always pretty happy with the results. And that's kind of the biggest point that I want to make. None of this has to be complicated. When you approach each scene, just break it down into 3 sections. First, start with getting all of your close-ups. That way your audience can make a connection with your subject, and then pull back and get all of your establishing shots and wide shots. That way the audience can see where your subject is. And then after you have those 2, then you can get creative and just spend whatever time you have left just finding interesting angles and cool shots. If you follow that formula, you'll always have the coverage that you need to tell your story. And then to record the interview with Logan that kind of drives the whole piece, I just plugged a Deity VLOF microphone just directly into my cell phone, and just recorded an interview in the car. That way I didn't need to pack a separate audio recorder, and I was pretty happy with the results that I got.
So that's it for this.
Oh my god.
What's up, YouTube?
So that's pretty much it. That's how I approach a shoot like this. Basically where you have no resources, you have no time, and you're kind of working in a way where you're not gonna be able to get the exact content that you want. You know, you're not gonna be able to really, fine tune every single shot. You're just kind of running and gunning. You just want to be able to shoot and get the content and get it as pretty as you can. Anyways, I hope this video has been helpful. I hope you're able to, apply some of this to your own work if you ever get stuck in a situation like this. As always, if you like what we're doing on this channel, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, tell all your friends, and I will see all of you in the next video.